The progressive revolution doesn't stop when the live show ends. Join the home of progressives and become a TYT member today. Click the link below. Joining us on the Young Turks, Bernie Sanders. So, Senator Sanders, great to have you here.
Great to be with you, Cenk.
All right, let's start out nice and easy, and then I do have some tough questions for you. Should we get out and vote?
That is a tough one, and let me answer it this way. Only if you are concerned about whether or not America remains a democratic country, whether you're concerned about more tax breaks for billionaires and cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, whether maybe you are concerned that we have a president that doesn't even recognize the reality of climate change, let alone do anything about it. Other than that, hey, don't vote.
Okay, so who are you out campaigning for right now?
We have in a 2-week period, by Sunday night, we'll have been to 13 states and probably held over 35 rallies and meetings. And therefore, a wide variety of candidates in Iowa, in Indiana, in Michigan, in California, you name it, we have been there. And I would tell you, Cenk, there is a lot of enthusiasm at the grassroots level and some really good candidates. But I hope and I pray that we recover substantially from the disaster of 4 years ago when this nation had the lowest voter turnout since World War II. We need a massive voter turnout. If that happens, I think the Democrats stand a good chance to regain control over the House, a shot at the Senate, and certainly the opportunity to elect a number of progressive governors all over the country.
So let's talk about that. So the Democratic establishment, as I refer to them, think that the idea for winning these elections is to get what they call the Whole Foods voters. Those are relatively wealthy suburbanites who were previously Republicans. I think the way to win elections is to get progressives to show up and vote. Where do you stand on that?
It's not a question of progressives. It's people who are hurting economically. It's young people. It is working people. It is people who understand that there is something absurd that in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, we got tens of millions of families that are struggling to make ends meet. And our job is to reach out to those people who have not been part of the political process and to bring them in and to demand that we raise. I mean, when you talk about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, you're talking about millions of people. When you talk about guaranteeing health care to all through a Medicare for All program, there are millions of people going to say, that's right, we got to do it. Where do I vote? So I think what we need, Cenk, is a progressive agenda that speaks to working families, many of whom are alienated from the political process. Many of them don't vote. We got to get through to young people, kids who are leaving school $50,000 or $100,000 in debt or can't afford to go to college. I was in Florida just the other day with Andrew Gillum's campaign. And before we left to the rally, I was talking to a young woman who works at the hotel. She makes $10 an hour and she has no health insurance at all. She's not registered to vote. And that's going on all over this country. We ought to reach out to those people and excite them about progressive politics and bring them into voting.
So one more, I said I'd ask you tough questions. So look, you got people like Richard Ojeda that have closed a 49-point lead in one of the reddest districts in the whole country. Trump had won it by 49 points. So on the other hand, you have Heidi Heitkamp. So Ojeda's running as a populist progressive, looking out for the people that you're talking about. Heidi Heitkamp is running as a corporate Democrat, saying big business is awesome, Republicans are awesome. I'm sorry that I'm a Democrat, and she's losing by 16 points in North Dakota. They're both red state, red district. But I want to ask you about Joe Donnelly. Joe Donnelly is running ads saying that he's against progressives. Do you think that's a bad strategy?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I like Joe personally. I think when you have 70% of the American people supporting Medicare for all, including, I'm sure, a strong majority in Indiana, when you got the overwhelming majority of the American people wanting to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, when you have a strong majority wanting to make public colleges and universities tuition free, and by the way, demanding that the wealthy and large corporations start paying their fair share of taxes. I think those are the issues that you have got to talk about. And look, it has been my view for a long time, and what the struggle within the Democratic Party is right now, is whether we bring more young people and working people into the party around a progressive agenda, or whether we become more conservative and appeal to upper income people. Now, having said that, I think there are a number of suburban women and others who are so disgusted with Trump and his lies and his behavior, they may vote Democratic, and that's great. But I think the focus of appeal has got to be bringing working people into the party and get them to stand up and fight for their rights.
I just found out that Latinos are the biggest group that listen to podcasts, but we don't go out and vote. What are some of the things that we can go out and tell our Latino brothers and sisters to vote in our best interest? Because as a collective, we are hurting, as you already know.
Well, Ida, interestingly enough, a friend of mine who does polling within the Latino community, he came back and he said he was really surprised. He thought that the issue of major concern would be immigration, which is an issue of considerable concern to the Latino community. But you know what he felt? What he found was the major issue? It was healthcare. Yeah. And I think what we have got to express to not only the Latino community, but every American, is that we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee healthcare to all people as a right, that it is totally insane that we spend twice as much per capita on healthcare as do the people of any other nation, and yet we have so many people uninsured, underinsured, and we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Healthcare is a right, not a privilege. We have got to get our Latino brothers and sisters into that fight.
What do we do to discourage the thinking that that's communist thinking for like people that are from Cuba? When you start talking about free healthcare, it reminds them of their trauma, but what you're talking about is completely different.
It is, and we understand that we have a president who lies every day and tries to confuse the American people. And the reason he's getting so agitated over, Medicare for all is, as I mentioned, 70% of the American people now understand that that is the direction we should go. I think the models that we have got to look at is other countries around the world, often in Scandinavia, Germany. In Germany, when you talk about education, you know what the cost of their college is for their people? It's zero. Same thing in Scandinavia. And that is exactly what we should be doing. And we should be rallying the American people to say, you know what, in this country, the three wealthiest people should not own more wealth than the bottom half of the American people. Trump and his friends will obviously try to frighten the American people. And our job is to just talk about the needs that workers face in this country, talk about what goes on around the rest of the world, and talk about how we can create an America that works for all of us and not just the people on top.
So, Senator Sanders, I want to ask you, if the Democrats win, and I know that it sounds premature, but there's only a couple of days left, and it looks like they have an excellent chance of winning the House and maybe the Senate. You have proposed Medicare for all. Medicare for all is backed by a majority of the Democrats in the House. Will it be profoundly disappointing if the Democratic leadership does not introduce Medicare for all for a vote?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. The legislation that I have introduced that has 15 co-sponsors in the Senate, it's a 4-year program. And the first year, would lower the eligibility age for Medicare from 65 to 55 and cover all of the young people in this country. That's what we do in year 1. Year 2, we lower it to 45, etc. I think the idea of lowering the eligibility age for Medicare to 55 is a wildly popular idea. Covering all the kids is a wildly popular idea. And I think the Democratic leadership would be crazy not to go forward in that direction.
All right, Senator Bernie Sanders, clear as always. And of course, everybody go out there and vote. There's only a couple days left, and volunteer if you can to knock on doors and make sure you get out to vote. Senator Sanders, thank you for joining us on the Young Turks.
Thank you, Cenk.
Like what you see? Click the subscribe button below and don't forget to ring the bell to never miss another video from the Young Turks.